Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, the glories of Glacier National Park, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Jeremy Covert. Jeremy has been guiding for us in North America since 2016. Thanks for being with us today, Jeremy. I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thank you very much, Kendall, and thank everyone for joining us today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite places, Glacier National Park, of course. I just wanted to tell you briefly what we're going to be seeing. We're going to start off with just some fun stuff, a little bit of images from the last trip I went on, and then we're going to go through the park. We're going to start like we would go on a trip, and we're going to go through the park, highlighting some of the best features, some of my favorite parts of it, see the entire thing, and then we're going to see some stuff that is very, very rarely seen that you can only see by backpacking and or by raft also. So I am the presenter, Jeremy Covert. I'm entitling this an Expedition Leader's Favorite Place, Glacier Waterton International Peace Park. And I am giving this presentation from Cherokee Park Studios in my home in Louisville, Kentucky on July 24th. 2020, and that is the proper pronunciation, not the proper spelling, Louisville, Kentucky. So I am born and raised here. I've been living out in Montana on the West Coast a good majority of my adult life. Just moved back here to be a little bit closer to family. My fiance and I are from here. We just bought a house, just closed on it, moving in a few weeks. We're really excited about that. My occupation is a full-time expedition leader and photographer. And in the last few years, I've been writing a lot, working and shopping around a book right now that I'm trying to get published. And my favorite place, ladies and gentlemen, which we are going to be heading today, is Glacier National Park. In Louisville, Kentucky, just a quick little synopsis, like 30th largest city in the US, very progressive, home of the Kentucky Derby, very, very vibrant city life, and the largest bat in the world. I'm actually not sure if it is, but it's at Louisville Slugger Museum, and it's massive when you drive by it. Warnings for the slideshow, that's right, this is not for the faint of heart, my friends. Photos on this slideshow span the last 8 years. We have 3 different types of cameras. Sensor quality and my desire for sensor quality and output have changed over those years. 3 different cell phones were used to take some of these pictures. I had to harvest them from 6 different external hard drives and 2 different computers. I am not making this up. They're in a box right here. Every type of way that you can experience a place, we're going to be doing today. We're going to be driving, we're going to be doing day hikes, multi-day backpacking, rafting, sailing, and maybe a few more. Also, and this is a big warning, there may be a few gratuitous selfies, but it's for a good cause to show you the place. But first up, a little hors d'oeuvre, a Yellowstone appetizer. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 20 Yellowstone slides from last trip, hot off the grill. I just got back a few days ago. Here we are, Old Faithful. As you can see, if you know where to go and you know how to shoot, you can eliminate the masses from the shots. The animals were there. It was an absolutely spectacular trip. There were still bison jams. There were still pronghorn and wolves and bears running around. The guests, as you can see here, socially distant appropriately, and world famous guide Matt Turner enlightening on everyone with one of his wonderful geology talks about the Devil's Slide. Everybody masked up. It was a great trip. Not all of the visitors that we encountered were masked, but we followed all safety protocols and personal protective equipment. It was a great trip. Some wonderful photos, some bluebird days. Here's my good friend Greg and Nancy at Grand Prismatic. Amazing shots and a wonderful group of people to go experience the park with. Here we are. We finished right off of Slough Creek, or not Slough Creek, Soda Butte Creek, eating lunch, and a grizzly shows up as soon as we are done eating lunch. It was a beautiful, beautiful timed thing. Here we are the next morning, having a very close and intimate experience with 5 of the Junction Butte packs and wolves. It was absolutely amazing in Lamar Valley, them harassing a bunch of bison, and then we got to watch them play for a really long time. It was amazing. A few more pictures from Grand Prismatic, the animals, and not everyone following socially distant rules, but the animals did. Here we have Corbin Hawkins, world famous guide and ops crew member, knew some secret places for us to have some decadent and wonderful, great lunches and dinners. And as you can see, we saw and did a lot. Thank you, my friends who were on this trip. Thank you, Matt and Gene, who I got it with. It was an absolutely great trip. What a great little appetizer that was. Oh, it was amazing. So, Glacier National Park. What does it mean to call any place your favorite place. Think about your favorite places that you go. Why is it your favorite place? Is it a favorite spot where you shoot sunrise or sunset, where there are very specific animals? Is it a single large carnivore doing its thing out in the wilderness that when you watch, time stands still? Is it amazing blue alpine waters, lakes, and streams that are clean enough to drink? I do not advise drinking them because there's definitely still some stuff that can get you very, very sick. But I know people who have drank them many, many times, and this is very, very, very clean water. Or is it a place that's a dark sky park where you can see the Milky Way? Is it a place where even when it's raining and even when the place is on fire, it's still beautiful? What places do you really love that you've been to? This guy, we finished our final dinner at the Pelton Chalet, and he came out, he was moved, sun was setting, he said, Jeremy, take my picture. You're always taking a picture, take my picture. This is what I want to remember of the trip. This was the trip. This is a perfect microcosm of the trip. So I started to get a picture of him in the sunset. He said, no, I want me just sitting here celebrating, looking at the sunset. This is what I want to remember. Is that what a favorite place is? Like this couple who went on their honeymoon there. And the last day I said, I'm gonna go up the trail. I want to shoot a picture of you guys. This is the pose they chose because this is how they felt that last morning of our full day hiking up at Hidden Lake Overlook. Or is a spot like this for me? My favorite sunrise spot in the world, which we're going to talk about at length. And I urge you to send me a better place than this too, because I've been looking a lot, and this is my favorite spot. Or a sunset spot, which is my favorite, is to drive out on the prairie. Or is it a road that's so unique that the road itself is the destination? Or is it a trail? It's not even a trail. It's a trail where you're walking and you and only animals walk on it. What makes these places so special? Is it the people that we get to meet, like Ernie Heavy Runner, a Blackfeet elder? He's one of the best storytellers and like an encyclopedia of the area. And he's not just talking about plants, animals, and names. He talks about a lot more than that, and what it means to be in these mountains. And meeting the locals in an area, especially the really unique locals like the Blackfeet on their reservation. Or is it meeting friends or going somewhere really special, like Mini Glacier here, looking at bears up on the hillside with family you've known your whole life, or with friends that you've known your whole life, or with new friends that you've made on this trip? Every single place that you would go that be considered that, you have to make that leap and go for it. And today, we're going to make that leap and go to Glacier. And I like to talk about why it's my favorite place, because it's not just because I've had some great experiences there and just because it's a neat place. I've traveled all over North and Central America, coast to coast, north and south. And Glacier is still my favorite place to go to. And we'll talk throughout this entire slideshow why. And I don't think that it is a singular experience. I think that it is a universal and a type of, it could be one of our favorite places. And we'll talk about that exactly. So Glacier National Park in Montana, located on the Canadian-US border. Here we are. It's only 60 miles wide by 90 miles tall. That's not that big. 1 million acres. Here we have on the top left, we've got a map of the park, the Glacier National Park, and then across the border in Canada, Waterton National Park, 1930, I think, I can't remember now. It was made the first international peace park, championed by the Rotary Club. They said the animals and the plants do not recognize borders, so why should this park? So they incorporated the park, and is the first of its kind, and has been the model for many since. And it is not just those two parks. So you got 500,000 acres up in Waterton, million plus in Glacier. And then if you look at this bottom map of Montana, there is a large yellow area, the Bob Marshall Wilderness, which is 3 wilderness areas, over 2 million acres. And so that is a massive wildlife corridor, only bisected by 2 roads. The Going to the Sun Road, which we're going to talk about extensively momentarily, and Highway 2, which is the southern edge of Glacier itself. Those are the only 2 roads that cross that 3.5 million acres. And then that entire complex of those 3.5 million acres is surrounded by a tremendous amount of national forests and managed resources that also provide a massive buffer. And ladies and gentlemen, when you're talking about wolverines, like what we have there, the largest group in lower 48 and the highest concentration of grizzly in a few spots in the lower 48, they need these massive wildlife corridors in this buffer to exist. And so that is why it's an important place. And then if you look just over here to the right, is important because it is also a meeting area, and that is why it's so diverse. We have over 1,000 vascular plants, incredibly diverse amount of birds and megafauna. And so you have stuff from the Southern Rockies ecosystem, the Northern Rockies ecosystem, the Pacific Northwest ecosystem to the west, and then the Great Plains to the east, all converging in Glacier. And then every mile you move away from the area that is Glacier, the Continental Divide is a good way to think about it. Every way you move, you become exponentially more that ecosystem. So here is a map of the park. This is where we're going today. We're going to be going from Whitefish in the southwest portion of the map. You can see the green is the way that we will drive in, and then, or the orange is the way we will drive in, and the green is the way we're going to head back out. And we're going to hit the Going to the Sun Road, Logan Pass, several trails on Logan Pass, down in the southeast to Two Medicine and the Glacier Park Lodge, up through the plains, up to Waterton National Park in Canada, and then back down. And this is important to note, mini glaciers, that green line that goes into the park. It's one of the deepest roads you can drive into the park, other than the Going to the Sun Road, which bisects it. And that is driving into one of the most wild areas that you will possibly be able to drive into in the United States. When we go into mini glacier, we will see over 100 slides of that on this. I promise you, we're not going to be hanging out on these slides this long. Just wanted to go over a few things in the beginning here. So things I want you to know: Glacier, the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and Waterton, millions of acres on two socially, political, and economically semi-stable countries' borders. I just put semi in for this slideshow. I've never had that in before, but seems apropos. And so that is very important: socially, political, economic, stable countries' borders. And why that is important is because we can preserve the wilderness there. We don't have people living hand to mouth, going out hunting for their subsistence every single day of the week. And so a lot of these animals still live there. Look at this quick slide I showed in another webinar. On the left, you have in bright red the farmed livestock on the planet, the entire biomass of mammals on the surface of the planet. Look at this slide, it's very powerful. Farmed livestock, bright red. Humans, unbelievable amount. All the wild animals that still exist, that blue little wedge. Ladies and gentlemen, Glacier National Park is one of those few places left on the planet where those wild animals still live, all of them that still can be there. We're missing the woodland bison and woodland caribou. The bison have been seen in mini glacier this season, actually for the first time in a very, very long time, but it's practically intact. Also look to the right, farm poultry versus wild birds, absolutely shocking. So where we are talking about Glacier National Park, one of those places where all these animals still exist. Now, it's also on the Continental Divide, but it's not just the Continental Divide as a part in the nation where water goes to the west or water goes to the east, on this continent to West Coast or Atlantic or Pacific. No, in Glacier, we have a triple divide peak, a very, very clean area. So it is not only the top of the roof, it's a little steeple on top of the roof where it goes in the third direction to the Hudson Bay in the Arctic Ocean. So we are at a place that is very difficult to live because it's so cold for so long of the year. It's also at the very top of the roof, so it's very clean. So because it's hard to live there and because it is very clean, it is still pristine in every way, shape, and form. Now, a lot of the trees you see here have been chopped down. There were roads right in this picture. This is above Grinnell Glacier from the Glacier Overlook. We're going to talk about this exact spot several times. And but they have grown back. There were cattle operations that were trying to move into Glacier before it was made a park. Thank God they could not make it profitable. There are still active mining claims that could be harvested from Glacier National Park. It's not profitable. That's why they're not mining there. That's why this place was not basically industrialized, because it was just too hard to get to. It was really interesting note, you had Native Americans and trappers and wild mountain men living in this place, you know, as late as 1900. And so you have people with cameras and reporters actually interviewing them and shooting photos. And there's this rich history of what I like to call the last page in a chapter of humanity when that book shut, when we all moved into the industrialized, civilized world. And all of the negative stuff that goes along with that. But you could still get a glimpse of it through some of the history here in Glacier. Now, we're going to start with some heavy stuff here. It's not going to be fun, but I think it's really, really important to talk about. We're going to talk about glaciers being lost and a couple other species and ecosystems of concern due to basically global climate change. So here we are at Glacier Overlook. Gem Glacier's a little puffball at the very top right of the corner of the photo, and then directly below it is Grinnell Glacier, which used to be a full glacier, and then directly below that is Salamander. You can see 1940, circa 1940, Grinnell Glacier. And then 2013, right to the right. This is the same exact spot. And you can see how much it's melted. Now, there are 25 active moving glaciers. That means the glacier is still moving. This is what the glaciers do in Glacier National Park. It's akin to taking your foot, putting it in the sand, and just kind of smashing it back and forth. They do not flow like rivers of ice. They kind of grind in one spot. Agassiz Glacier, massive glacier. First time I saw this, it was like a guttural feeling. Everybody on the hike just stood silently at it. I said, how does that make everybody feel? Everyone said they felt sick because they could get a sense this glacier was on this giant rock slab as a thermal insulator, and it should still be there. Clements Glacier, on our trip, we hiked by this on our last full day morning. You can see in 1914 how it ground out right at the base of that Clements Mountain, and you can see the moraine that it left there. So there are still 25 glaciers. You can see 5 to 12, relatively easy if you know where to look from the roads, which almost every trip does, and in Glacier. But it is a place that is changing, and in our lifetimes, that could be reduced to just a few glaciers. Supposedly there are 2 that are growing, but a large majority will stop moving and sliding around, basically. And it's not just the glaciers that have cause for concern. The Meltwater Stone Fly, these photos courtesy of Joe Gersh, who is the gentleman in the photo here. He was hired by the park to study them because they were a risk for going extinct in the park, because they are a very unique aquatic insect that lives a couple hundred yards, basically below a glacier. So that ultra clean, ultra cold water flowing out of that glacier, they can't live that first couple hundred yards because it's just simply too cold. But once it gets down a little bit, they harvest a lot of aquatic stuff growing in and on the rocks, and then they have these massive blooms where thousands of terrifyingly large stone flies fly all over your face and between your collar and your shirt and everything. They're harmless, and they will blanket the area and lay their pupa and then go on with full life cycle. Well, these channels coming out of the glaciers are melting as the glaciers are receding, and they're not as wide, and they are spreading out into thinner and thinner strips, and it was a cause for concern. Joe was hired to study them, found them in other places in the US. They were moved off the endangered species list, but it is a concern. And is it going to affect your life? No, probably not. But losing a clean fresh water source is going to affect everyone's life. And losing any animal from the face of the earth is going to affect our lives. It's just not going to be felt right now. The wolverine, gulo, the double glutton. Gulo is Latin for glutton. They are a species of concern in Glacier. There's only about 40 to 60 breeding adults. It's the largest concentration in the lower 48, and they are not going to, ironically, be affected by the heat so much, although that will affect them. It's actually going to be the cold. We have these warming events in late January through February and into early March. It can be a week to 10 days of very, very warm winds coming in from the Pacific Northwest. And it is exponentially increasing, and the wolverines are losing a lot of their insulation that they need in the snow to be able to warm their young, which are born in the winter, and they should have enough insulation. But with these warming events, the snow is reducing enough to where they are threatened to freeze to death. And there is no quicker way to remove an animal from the face of the earth to reproduce its ability to reproduce and raise its young. And that is some of the challenges that the wolverines are facing. And this is their roaming ground right here at the Glacier Overlook. And right over here to the left, me and some of the employees of the Granite Park Chalet have seen the wolverine tracks coming out, and we think that this is a denning site. So you can see the type of place that they are living in. And when you see how much of that melt is happening, you can start to see how it is going to affect these species' lives. This is from the same view, the top side, sorry, that is from cell phone, and it is very old, but looking up and to the right, and then you can see Upper Grinnell Lake, which used to simply be called Grinnell Glacier. And then in the lower slide, that is if you were to turn around and look below you at Grinnell Lake, Josephine, the ribbon lakes coming off of a glacier where it breaks apart, and then the pressurized water digs out those lakes and then deposits sediment below it. You can see that, river lakes. Very, very under talked about part of glaciation. And it's not just glaciers and animals, also a major species of concern, and this is not a joke, the flowers. The Alpine Meadows, a lot of the trees due to warming temperatures are creeping up into Alpine Meadows and shading them out, like here at Iceberg Lake. And the wonderful diversity is being lost. And that is an important food source. It's not just a beautiful landscape we're losing, it's an important food source for a lot of different animals and not just small furry creatures. Also bears and all of the predators that eat the small animals. Goats are foraging up there also. And these trees cannot be stopped. It's nothing that we can stop. And so it's just something we can witness, try to react to, but see and hope and pray that all of these animals can and are able to change. But the rate of change that we are seeing with global climate change events is the thing that is the danger, because these animals, they do evolve, but they cannot evolve at a fast enough rate. Last thing we're going to talk about, and it's time for a drink, the white bark pine blister rust that came in on apricot trees, commercial apricot trees from Europe years ago, made its way into the park and killed a significant percentage of the white bark pine. Thank goodness, like 40+% of the trees were immune to it, and they have started an aggressive replanting program, propagation program, which is having stunning results. And in the end of our lifetimes, it's supposed to be a full recovery. So it's not all bad in the park. We have not messed it all up. It is still a beautiful place to visit and to go see the tree into medicine, which is what this is called. And there have been fire events in the last few years. You may have heard, and it has been burning a lot. This is an ecosystem that is used to that, and it is necessary here. So don't think that that is totally abnormal, although it has happened a little bit more than is average of late. Whew, that was a lot of negative stuff. I think it's time we have a drink here. Glacier Park Lodge. This is ginger tea. And this is another thing that we did right in the park. This is the Prince of Wales up in Waterton, looking into America from Canada. This is the view out the window. A lot of these hotels were designed and built, handpicked by Louis Hill, one of the leaders of the railroad. And he came out, selected these sites, try to get people, rather than going over to Switzerland, come see it here first in America. And he built these hotels and tried to truck people out here via the train to live. Glacier Park Lodge, another amazing place that we can stay. These hotels are really phenomenal. It's part of the adventure, and really, really great spot to unwind after each day. Your choice, drink of choice. Interesting note, these Doug fir pillars in the background were shipped in from the West Coast, and that is actual bark on them. Pretty spectacular for the building in the Glacier Park Lodge. And since they are so such old hotels, occasionally things happen. Like this one day when I woke up at 2 in the morning at Glacier, or at Mini Glacier, I said, wow, it's really quiet. And I opened the door and looked down the hallway and realized the power was out. It was out for the next 2 days. Did not affect our trip. It was still a stellar trip. This was part of the adventure part in Natural Habitat Adventures. It was great. So the hotels, absolutely wonderful resource to see. Warning, gratuitous selfie warning. That's right, next 11 slides. I only show you this to try to give you a sense, some of the experiences I've had and the reasons I love it. Here I am kayaking, actually rowing a big boat through the Nyack floodplain, hiking on the Highline Trail, hiking up in the northeast section of the park, overlooking the Belly and into Canada. Ooh, a really steep, crazy place, looking for Falling Leaf Lake above Mini Glacier Lodge. This rainbow came out. Very steep, very, very intense hiking. Don't go this way to Falling Leaf Lake. Go the waterfall way. The goats in the park, I love them. This goat came up and was curious about us. Most likely wanted to wait for one of us to have to go to the bathroom. Sad to say, but that's what they do. And here we had an exciting moment. You can see the bear spray in my hand. Off to the left of that bear spray, that is a gigantic grizzly, a big boar, and he is coming at me. My 4 friends have just ran off and left me. Thank you, Jason and Craig. And they were kind of overwhelmed. I understand that. It's a big bear and it's coming at us. And so they have left me by myself, and I have 2 cans of bear spray. It's very difficult to shoot with the GoPro and very difficult to show you how close this bear is. That covered that ground in seconds and came down to the riverbed. It was closing in on me. My friends were over 100 yards away. I had to turn around, point both bear cans of bear spray at it, in which case I am sure it has been sprayed before, just because it's up on the Como Pass Trail here is very popular, and it went right up the riverbed there. Very exciting moment. No bears were sprayed in the making of that photo, by the way. As soon as it saw me kind of coming towards it, it went in the other direction. On the Highline Trail again, one morning, the bighorn sheep running around the parking lot trying to lick up as much antifreeze as they can before the rangers chase them off. And then here we are at Virginia Falls, early season, when you have just so much water charging down, going at like 60-mile-an-hour winds coming off of that. Soaks you in 3 seconds, literally, you're soaked coming there. But it's really hot typically early season when you're hiking up there, so it's okay. Safety checkup. Okay, so 4 things in this photo. First off, don't ever let an animal get this close to you. If you do, know what to do. First things we're seeing here, the safety checkup. Full sunsuit, protect you against dehydration, sunburn. Got a wide brimmed hat with a dark underside. Full long sleeves, long pants, sun gloves. Bear spray out and ready because as animals just walked up, the guests have been kind of ushered right up into the shrubs. We're letting this goat walk by us, but we still have the bear spray out and ready as much as we can. Keep in mind, we are on the side of the cliff here too, so I cannot get up into the shrubs anymore. Notice the safety whistle in case anything does go wrong. And then very lightweight shoes, another important safety feature for hiking. It can double your amount, time, distance you can hike. If you know how to, and walk safely in very, very lightweight, wide toe box shoes. So, say that kind of as a joke, but it's true. Rocks and water, not that interesting typically to talk about, but in Glacier, fascinating. Here we have a set of fossils that's important to every single one of us. It is Stromatolite, and it is a blue-green algae mat, a really gross pond scum thing, 2 to 3 feet wide, that grows on top of one another in layers. And these are the fossils of those things. They grow in a shallow saltwater sea, 2 to 6 feet deep. There are 2 spots in the world that they still grow currently. And these grew in a shallow saltwater sea known as the Belt Sea, about 70 miles west of this landmass, what is now Glacier in North America. And when these were on the surface of the earth, prepare yourself, my friends. This landmass was at the equator. So what we're talking about is when these rocks, what made these rocks was exposed to the surface of the earth. It was in a shallow, warm, saltwater ocean at the equator. That's how much time and how much movement and metamorphosis has happened since they saw the light the day before. We'll talk about why and how right now. So how that happened is you have this massive, these 2 tectonic plates butting up against one another, and one came up and on top of the other. I promise it's not going to be a long geological lecture, just a quick one. These 2 plates came up on top of one another, and the bottom layer, the most ancient layer, rested on very, very young rock. You can see that in the illustration on the bottom right, Chief Mountain. We're going to see pictures of that in a second. So this one giant landmass ducted, came up on, the other one subducted, I think. It came underneath, exposing that ancient layer of rock, and then normal erosion ground the rest of it away, and then glaciation dug these giant, cool-looking valleys that we can see. Here you can actually see the angle of that giant tectonic plate, and you can see the prairie way out there. This is the place where the mountains meet the prairies, what they say. And you can actually see the angle of it coming up and out. And then the continental divide, we have the weather systems coming from the Pacific Northwest. They roll in over that continental divide and they hit that dry air of the prairie, and they just shed all of their moisture right at those high elevations and right what we think of as glacier right at this picture. And most of that, because it's so cold, was a precipitation in the form of snow. All that snow piled up, turned into ice. And then all that ice, once it got heavy enough and big enough, just started flowing straight downhill in either direction, creating these giant U-shaped hanging valleys and these giant U-shaped valleys, which is indicative of glaciation. And another lake right there where all of that high pressure water from the glacier melting went down, scooped up sediment and deposited below. So you can see glaciation, you can see mountain building, you can see all kinds of fascinating stuff. Here's Chief Mountain on the far right. You can see that angle of this landmass pushing up onto the prairie there, a little bit closer view of it. Absolutely fascinating. And that's the leading edge of that plate right there, Chief Mountain. Also a very spiritual place for the Blackfeet. The whole front of that mountain actually fell off, I think, in the 70s. 60, I can't remember, and changed the whole look of it, but registered on Richter scales for states away. Here is behind Chief Mountain, looking at Papoose to the right. And outside of that, it is spectacular on the prairie, looking back at those mountains. So the water and the rocks. That's the rocks. They're very old. Here we have a couple different colored rocks. We've got some red rocks and we've got some grayish rocks. The red rocks were a mud or sedimentary substrate that actually was exposed to oxygen, and 0.04% of iron in it rusted basically. So that's why it's red. It's Red Rock Canyon. Great spot to see bears and go on some beautiful hikes up in Waterton. And then you see the blue-gray rocks. They were in an anaerobic environment, so no oxygen to oxidize the red, making this is in every single body of water in Glacier that you see, these old and younger rocks. Very, very cool. So it is said that it predates the fossil record, but it just predates the fossil record in what we think of. So you don't see big fossils in this park because the rocks are so old. It's only very, very tiny fossils. Here I am in the water, very, very clear. You can see there's still some stuff in it. Absolutely spectacular though. Here's at the foot of Lake Mcdonald. Here I am in the Nyack on the Middle Fork of the Flathead, looking into the Bob Marshall east of the park. One of my favorite spots to boat. And here I am with Windbreaker, my little sailboat, moored on Lake Mcdonald. It's the only lake that I sailed in, and absolutely stunning to be out there, be the only person. Here I am, and it looks much larger from the inside. No, that's not really, that's me off the coast of California. Okay, the Going to the Sun Road, one of the most spectacular places that you can go, and a major destination in the park. And this is a quote from George Bird Grinnell: "If you climb to the top of that mountain, you can climb all the way up to the sun." It's actually his guide said that to him when he said, "How tall can you climb when you go up to that mountain?" He said, "You can climb all the way up to the sun with that mountain." And he named it the Going to the Sun Mountain. It's worth noting that George Bird Grinnell vowed to never set foot in the park if they put a road in it, because he wanted to remain an absolute wilderness area where you had to walk in or go in by horseback, which is how the original park users went, until they built this amazing piece of landscape architecture, the Going to the Sun Road. And here's the Triple Arch, one of the most famous spots on it. And it is a unbelievable access into wilderness like no other in the lower 48. Some say it's the most beautiful road in the world. The red buses, the longest running fleet of commercial passenger vehicles in the US. It's 35mm slide film here. That's why it looks so strange. There's a couple pictures in here. It's also the Corbin car wash there. Water flows out of that throughout the entire summer from a ice filter glacier in the backside of it. There's the end of the Going to the Sun Road. Logan Pass is at the top. Here is above the road. You can get this shot every day of the year from the road. This one also. This is looking east into what they call the Hanging Garden. Isn't that a beautiful name? You can get a sense of the diversity of these Alpine Meadows. You can maybe, with the right imagination, you can actually see the trees slowly marching up into these hillsides. If you get a sense of that, if you were to look at old photos. And a place, even when it's inclement weather, is beautiful to photograph. The Hidden Lake Overlook, absolute stunning spot. Goats are visible most days there. Funny story about this goat later. Goat walked through the picture of this. I could not find the actual picture. This is one of the out photos, but Carl posed for a photo here. Goat walks right in between both of us here on a trip a few years ago. Super fun trip there in Bot too. Another one of my favorite trips up, the kids asked if we could slide since there was so much snow. And I said, yeah, we can actually. So we brought up bags and we slid down, adults of all ages, laughing like children. Great time. Another gratuitous selfie. This is like, I very rarely take pictures of myself, but this is a good one. Looking above the road, which is just below us, and driving in, it looks like you're in an inversion because of these low-level clouds. But when you get above it, it is a beautiful, beautiful bluebird day. Well, with a little bit of clouds, which make better photos. And the clouds there flow like water through these valleys. If you were to set up a time lapse, it's beautiful. The Glacier Overlook, we've seen a couple pictures of this. It's a 0.6 mile off the Highline Trail. It's very intense, 9 miles to get to it, and then another over 0.6 miles actually to get up to the top. And I got to spend here 2 years ago last night with my fiance. Made a nice dinner up here. Our camp had too many mosquitoes, so we hiked up, and you get a sense of scale looking down on the former Grinnell Glacier spot, which is Grinnell Lake. Here we were last year in Alaska. Has nothing to do with this. It's just across from Homer, but I just found that last night when I was talking to my fiance about it. Thought I would throw it in. Now we're back in Glacier, Avalanche Lake, a really wonderful hike, very easy off of the Going to the Sun Road. Virginia Falls, another first day destination. Here we are with a great group of people. Late season, you can see how much water is coming down versus early season there, late season there. Super fun trip with these groups. In between fires, rain came, put the fire out. It was great, really amazing trip. And then St. Mary Falls at the bottom of the hill there. This is early season with a lot of water charging through it. On the way to Avalanche Lake, Hidden Lake. The marmots up at Hidden Lake Overlook Trail. They only live a few years, but in that time they are sleeping most of the time in hibernation, so they're actually above ground barely a year for their 3+ year life. Okay, now we're up in the Waterton Lakes National Park, Alberta and BC. Their park straddles the Continental Divide there, which is the separator for Alberta and BC, Cameron Falls. With the right type of weather conditions, this can be a bright red waterfall due to all the red argillite dust. But here it's just brown because the rain just came through. The closest official picture I've ever seen a guest to a black bear. Her and her husband walked down from the hotel, and it was directly below them on the road. She was shocked to see it only a few feet away. I mean, they're 8 feet above it, and there's a railing, and it's a small rock wall. And she shot this picture directly above it. She showed me later. I was shocked. Said officially that's the closest black bear photo. Please do not try to be closer than that to a bear. They were very scared. Very scary situation to be that close to a bear. Waterton burned over 70% of the park. The vegetation burned a few years ago. It is a natural part of the landscape for that to happen, but it is made for incredible hiking in different parts of the park. Here is the US-Canada border, which we see on a boat ride. We see a lot of different boat rides in the park throughout the trip. One of the original ways people got around in the park. Looking east for a sunrise off of at the Prince of Wales in Waterton. And the bears can be seen literally from the hotel. The best bear viewing is in between the hotel and the golf course and just beyond. It's absolutely amazing, unprecedented. And beyond, around that, there's a lot too. The flowers in the entire landscape, both Glacier, Waterton, and surrounding areas are amazing. Here's rainbow flowers. These are smaller than your pinky fingernail. Looking through, you can look through your binoculars backwards to make them into a microscope to see those guys. Really beautiful. Shooting stars, I shoot them whenever I see them. They're along a lot of waterfalls. The bear grass is epically amazing for a good majority of the season. It actually starts low elevation and goes high throughout the season, so we get blooms throughout a good majority of the year. This is, I would say, late July, about right now, actually, when it would be really going off at the parts of the park that are most easily accessible. The alpine flowers truly are some of the most diverse and unique and alien dinosaur-like flowers, I think, that I see. Take a little break. Who knew how rangers stored their hats? Imagine you walk into an office, every single one of you has the same hat, but they're all different sizes. They're made out of cardboard or paper, which those hats are. Who would have thought of this genius method? That's right, it took us months to get inside the back room through a very stealthy mission. Actually, my friend just let me in. I shot this quick photo with my phone. I thought it was really funny. Share it with whoever. Whenever you do go to places, if there are animal warnings, take pictures of it. It's interesting. Show it to your friends and family. Maybe you can post it in your office. People think you're a tough person. Mountain lions, definitely something you should be considered about. It's one of the few animals that I actually am scared of. They can grab you and jump 20 feet up into a tree. But it's nothing to be concerned unless you're a little kid. Don't hike by yourself if you're a little kid, basically. Another interesting sign I always tell people to shoot. All right, we're gonna move just into kind of a story section of this, and my few favorite places. We're gonna go to Twice the Medicine, aka the Two Medicine area first, a huge area for amazing photography, waterfalls, hikes, animals, Rising Wolf Mountain here, great moose habitat, and one of my favorite hikes in the world on the planet, a 19-mile loop around the Continental Divide, or on the Continental Divide, Dawson-Pittamakan Loop. It's not for everyone. It's a little bit of an intense hike. Here's the start of it. This is where it starts to get beautiful. Just a few miles off the trailhead, Old Man Lake here, looking up at the Continental Divide behind it, looking down on that same spot. There's my fiance and travel partner taking photos, looking north towards St. Mary, hiking on these knife-like ridge lines. They're like 5 to 10 feet wide in different spots. Epically amazing, beautiful. I've done this as a 3-day backpacking trip and as a single-day hike several times. Absolutely stunning. You see the fire that happened a few years ago. I was there days before the fire, and I was there days after they opened it to see some of what had cleared. Absolutely shocking difference. Still see a lot of animals in there, still beautiful. It will take the rest of my lifetime to change and get back to what it was. Here we are walking with a spot device, one of our favorite spots to shoot in the very extreme backcountry. Here is looking east off of that Continental Divide again, showing the U-shaped valleys of the glacier. Some mountain or some bighorn sheep charged up from out of nowhere, most likely scared by some predator. There's a lot of grizzlies teaching their young to hunt up there. Juvenile couldn't make it up, had to go a different route than the adults. Had to go left there. A moose blocked our path. The last time we went for about 15 minutes, I had to hike down into a creek bed to the right and make a bunch of noise to draw it over there, and then we had to run back up onto the trail and then hightail it back. It was a very touch and go situation. Bear spray was out and in everybody's hands. Here we had a lot of blackbacks and three-toes show up due to the fires. They pluck the bark off rather than kind of like a normal woodpecker to access bugs. Tumed, another great sunset spot, or sunrise spot rather. Spotted these ferruginous hawks just before fledging at a nest right on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation, right off the road. Absolutely spectacular. Another birding paradise. Glacier is amazing. Tons of birds right along the eastern front of the range going up, and then tons that actually are over summering there that you can see, like this waxwing. And now we arrived at one of my favorite places, Mini Glacier. Here I am, not just in silent contemplation. I actually have a binocular and I'm looking up on the hillside for bears while we wait for a boat I think this is on Lake Josephine. Yes, at the head of Lake Josephine. Here is Grinnell Glacier. We talked about it there. This is in Mini Glacier, which I just want to highlight some of my favorite parts of Mini Glacier. That's Salamander Glacier up on the left. I'm standing on Grinnell Glacier, and that's Glacier Overlook, which we've seen several photos of looking down on these glaciers. So that photo is taken in the very far left in that back valley. And this is one of the majestic sunrises for Mini Glacier. Of course, this was a very old camera, so not the best, but we do see some others here. One day I got up to shoot, and my good friend Will, one of the guests, had already beat me to one of the best spots to shoot. So I stood below, shot pictures of him up shooting the sunrise. Beautiful morning. And here's the hotel again. And we will see a multitude of these sunrise shots here in a second. In the fire, still beautiful. This is where I bet people money that if they go to a certain spot and it's miles long and you look up on the hillside, you will see grizzlies every morning and every night of the summer in Mini Glacier. And it's because they're there every single day. And there are people with spotting scopes looking at them, and you can go find them. It's very easy, one of the best spots to see them. Also moose. Like this guy chasing the moose off of the trail, which had held up the hike for like 10 minutes. This was a civilian, just came out of nowhere and did that. And grizzly cubs, of course. And once again, it was out of Mini that you can drive and get these west-facing sunsets. This is the entrance. Like I said, the clouds are necessary for good photography most of the time. Okay, now we're getting to a set for my favorite spot to shoot sunrise. Right here, notice the horses coming up. Good photo. That little bridge in the background, that's the spot you want to go to. These horses are going up to a spot where they will be used for taking horse tours. But the stable takes them across that bridge and on this trail. So good spot to shoot some photos of them coming up. A famous tree in Mini Glacier, also a sacred spot to the Blackfeet. Also an area that was a village, winter village too. Apakuni Falls, not too far from there. Once again, illustrating some of the small ecosystems that live in those little zones around those waterfalls. Here sitting, waiting for moose, this doe and two fawns came right out and right up to the giant group of people. And these animals use us as cover from predators because there are also grizzlies and black bears circling in the woods after those fawns specifically. Literally, we hear it sometimes where there's multiple bears circling and chasing the moose and deer down into this lake. But these deer came literally right up next to us. At this point, this deer is 8 feet away from a group of people, and we are all sitting just still, and it's just feeding because it knows it's safe right next to us. Please send me a better location for a sunrise spot than the bridge at Mini Glacier. I've been searching my entire life, and this is my top choice. Don't believe anyone if you go there and they say it's going to be too cloudy to shoot. Go out anyways. You need clouds for these photos. So this is what you want to see early in the morning, about 30 minutes plus to sunrise or 45 minutes even beforehand. And you can watch the development. This is behind you. This is in front of you. So you have to be ready. You have to have tripods, plural, even cameras, plural, even. That's my gear right there in the middle. Don't just stay on one side of the bridge because that's right, the horse group comes through. This is one of my favorites, and this one is one of my favorites. Oh, so great, really. So be ready. Have your head on a swivel. Shoot way more photos than you think you need, and that's how you get photos like these. And look in both directions. This is 35mm slide film. That is a bald eagle flying over Swift Current there. Swift Current Overlook. One of the boats we take, the Morning Eagle, the wonderful traveling guest, Francesca. Mini Glacier Hotel. And now we get to a fun few stories, my friends. We're out of the serious stuff. Here I am, innocent, August 5th, 2013. I have 2 backpacks worth of stuff. You notice the backpack typically ends at the level of your head or below. It goes up about another 18 inches. I have 2 full backpacks. I think one is strapped to my back, and then a ton of gear. I've gone in to rescue someone. I'm charged by this moose on the way in by myself. The ground shakes. It runs within a few feet of me. I do get some good photos after the fact. Another backpacking trip. I can tell I'm struggling just by the look on my face, but it's worth it because we are on the west side going to one of the most amazing places, hole in the wall for a hike. Even worth the mosquitoes that you cannot even eat. We can only drink at camp, but we're not at camp long because a moose shows up and chases us out a few minutes after this photo is taken. Very exciting ordeal. I wrote a great story about it. Now, we're gonna end with 3 goat stories, ladies and gentlemen. Normal view of a mountain goat, distant, through a scope, majestic, I know. The goat on the Highline Trail, a little different. I've been dealing with these goats a few years ago at this point for weeks. Their MO is they wait on the trail, make people wait. After a certain amount of time, somebody goes to the bathroom off the side of the trail, the goats run over, try to go into that area, eat the soil, the person goes to the bathroom. I know, it's disgusting. These goats are starving to death because these rocks are so old, all the minerals have been leached out of them, so every mineral they get can be another life-saving calorie. So these goats are smart, they've learned this. So I am constantly telling civilians how to get around the goats. This goat, this big Billy, is being very obstinate this day. Finally, a family from Texas comes up, pushes the goat away as I'm yelling at them what to do. The guy in front is protecting themselves. I say, be careful, the goats will gore you and they hit you in the groin when they do. You can see that's why he has his hand in his pockets, and that's not a joke, although it is a little funny. So these guys push past the goat. The goat sees this happen. I'm on this is a ridiculous photo, pause in the story. I just shot this last year with my fiance. She hates this photo, but I am in a very safe place in this photo. It looks really bad just because of the lay of the land, but it is a big, huge rolling cliff there. If you were to fall, you would stop immediately. And so most of this trail is very, very safe, but there are a few parts where it is not safe, and it is an absolute cliff. Where I was, very safe. Where this spot, not so safe, and then a few other spots not so safe. So it is a very much a spot to be concerned about. But you know, if you have fear of heights, yes, definitely be concerned. But it is a huge, wide trail. There's a huge run out for the cliff. There's only a few spots where you want to hold on to the rope, which is everywhere. So here we have the goat walking past some kids. At a certain point, the goat just stops at every group of people and lets me instruct them on how to get out of its way, and it does so, and they do. And the goat past. So here, the goat, I can't see the people, so it is waiting for me to yell around the corner to the group of people that they have to get against the wall to let the goat move. This is the guy yelling back to the other group to tell everybody to go back, and they opt to get behind the line and let the goat go. We have one more person. Everyone else has gone back, except for a person with a baby and a carrier who opts to climb up on the cliff on the other side of the green rope to let the goat go by. Absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe it. especially right with 80-foot cliff right there. And that is one of the dangerous spots. I did not tell the person to do that. So we get by, the goat has just made it through safely. And the goat climbs off and I swear poses for a wonderful picture as our group slowly walks past it. And then it walked down into the Alpine Meadow and just fed for a long, long time. We got to shoot some really, really wonderful photos of it. So that's the goat on the highline. Here's another story. The goat at Hidden Lake Overlook phenomenon. Not so much a story as a phenomenon. There is a place that you can go. We often eat lunch there, where a goat will just show up and stand perfectly framed for this overlook photo. And after years of seeing this, I finally figured out, and looking at several series of photos, I think what's happening is the goat is saying, what are all these people looking at here? They're always shooting photos and looking in this direction. So we figured out the goat phenomenon at the Hidden Lake Overlook. Go there. It's absolutely amazing. The goats do this daily. It's unbelievable, really. They've actually got it roped off where you're supposed to stand. Goats walk out here. They're not paid. They're not trained. They just do it. Different goats, too, every day. Story number 3, the trusting nanny. Sometimes just sitting down in a beautiful place and waiting. The animal will walk up to you because they are curious about you. And that is exactly what happened with this kid and this nanny. I was about, I would say 50, 60 yards away, and there were like 30 people who were harassing these 2 goats. I sit down just on my off day, and I just have a phone and a little cheap point and shoot camera. And I'm just taking in the beauty of this area that I've driven up here super early to shoot sunrise. I put my serious camera gear away. And the goats see me sitting passively over on this rock by myself, and they actually come up to within 8 to 10 feet of me. Every time I move to get up, they shake and it becomes dangerous. So I sit still and just film with my tiny point and shoot camera and take most of these photos with my phone, actually. And then I become the center of attention with people on the other side, serious photographers on the other side, shooting this because the nanny is using me as protection from the grizzly bears that are up there trying to teach their young to hunt the kids. So, which is a very real thing. So not the best photos of this event, but an amazing event. And once again, this is just sitting and being quiet, and the animal came up to me in this area. You never want to approach these animals. And those horns are razor sharp. But some of my favorite shots I got of the kid. Marmot came up, and the baby, the kid and the marmot played together for a while. It was great. And this is what they're afraid of up there. And this is why they are by us and coming up, because the grizzlies on a daily basis are running around trying to get the kids. And occasionally, you'll see goats come charging through an entire line of people, and everyone's cheering for the goat because just behind it, 50, 60 yards, is a massive grizzly running with its cubs another 150 yards behind it. Everybody rooting for the goat. So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the presentation of Glacier National Park. I hope that you, like me, maybe are intrigued to think maybe this could be a favorite place. Maybe this could be one of the next vacations that you want to go and explore. And it is a place for everyone. Beautiful photography, as we have seen in some of these photos and some of these spots, and readily available. You do not have to get up super early for sunrise or sunset. You don't have to be a crazy person like that. You can go and do it in a relaxed and fun way and have the time of your life. So I will be available for questions. I urge every one of you to visit. We have seen a lot today, starting in Whitefish, going through the park, down to Medicine, up to Waterton, back down through Mini Glacier, and up and over the going to the Sun Road again for the goat stories. And thank you very much, my friends. This is the end. So I do have a little bit of a closing comment, and I will take some questions. Seek out wilderness near your home and further afield, and watch out for dehydration, sunburn, poison oak, scorpions, snakes, and bears. Learn how to be safe out there. Take more photos than you think you need, because I promise you, just taking one shot, you will not get the shot. Take more than you think you need. And remember the most important thing, you're on vacation. Have fun out there. Make it fun for yourself, however that can be. And one thing that makes it fun for me, and that fun, you bring it back home, is if you go out there and you have some of your normal civilized baggage that you carry with you from your daily life. And that could be drama from work, it could be drama from family, it can be bills, it can be stress about a new house that you're buying, or anything like that. And you want to take all that civilized baggage, metaphorically speaking, go to these wilderness areas and leave it in a giant pile somewhere out on the trail. Just metaphorically speaking, of course. And then bring back with you what you find there. Peace, inner silence, outer silence, inspiration, and the perfection that you can only find in one of these perfect and remote wild places that are protected. So thank you very much for joining me. I'll be available as long as you guys want to answer any questions whatsoever. And thank you, NatHab, for giving me the opportunity to meet with all these wonderful people.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. This is an absolutely stunning part of the world, and I can't wait to get up there. And apparently a lot of people watching can't wait to get up there either. So I think you've been pretty inspiring. We do have questions for you, and I'd like to remind folks that if you have a question for Jeremy, you can submit that in the questions field in your control panel.
Yes,
okay.
Definitely. I'm still getting to a few of the questions from the last webinar. Sorry, I was super busy throwing on that last. You did watch the last webinar. I am getting to you, sorry, but do please email questions if you have them. Happy to.
No worries. Yep. Okay, first question. How much of what you showed us today would someone experience on a NatHab trip?
Almost everything, as I was just going through it today, almost everything is actually from a NatHab trip. There were only the backpacking trip and a few, if I said the Highline Trail, we can hike on the very beginning of that, but it's a little bit long for our itinerary. So a good majority of what you see today, all of Mini Glacier, maybe not getting up on the glacier because that's an extreme hike to get to, and it's actually very dangerous to hike on the glacier. I was with experts there, professionals, but it's a good majority of what you saw are literally from NatHab trips. And I'm not just saying that because a portion of it was from backpacking and sailing things, but I think that those were fairly obvious. A lot of the selfies were not, from NatHab trip spots, but a good majority of what we do. That's not just because I only go to those spots, it's because those spots are some of the most spectacular in the park. And you can hit them throughout the day for better photos. But excellent question on that, because I did have a diverse set of photos.
And I'll combine two questions here. How many days is the NatHab trip? And if you were to go on your own, how many days would you recommend you would need to be able to fully take things in?
Good question. This is a deep park. And so I think the NatHab trip that stays just in the US is a 7-day trip. And then the one that goes up to Waterton is a 9-day trip. And I would say you want to aim for about that duration, or if you were going to go on your own personal trip, a few more days. So week to 2 weeks is what I would always tell people. And I always tell people, you can go to Glacier National Park like 5 times and never make it to Mini Glacier because you're seeing all of these other things that are so amazing. But I always say Logan Pass and the Going to the Sun Road, doing a couple specific hikes on the Going to the Sun Road, and making it over to Mini Glacier, because that's really the heart and soul of the park for me. Seeing all those bears, the beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and then there's a good half dozen hikes that you can do from the hotel or from the single campsite from Mini Glacier that could be its own national park experience, and it would be amazing. And then the Going to the Sun Road and a few other trips would be its own other great Glacier National Park experience, if that makes sense. So, each one of those full day hikes is a full day that you're traveling to get there. So that's going to be days. And then going just the travel days, you're going to have at least 3 travel days involved going around the park to get to and from places from Whitefish and back, and then around inside it. So, I would say definitely a week to 2 weeks, if that answers the question.
Yeah, great.
And definitely consulting Two Medicine, Mini Glacier, and that Logan Pass corridor and some of the hikes along that. Those 3 spots are amazing. There's a whole west side that's amazing. That's not even talking about the rafting and boating and swimming and backpacking potential also. That is, if you're going to be going on a personal trip, it's absolutely an amazing place to do that too.
Okay, great. And a couple more questions about the NatHab trip. How long are you out and about each day, and what kind of physical shape do you recommend being in? Is there a lot of hiking?
Really good question. I have this in my original notes to say, but I was too excited and had so much to share with everybody. So it is This hike can be done. I could go here with my mother and she could hike for minutes a day and see a good portion of what we are seeing. Now, naturally, and it's depending on, your physical ability is going to be what you would be comfortable with, obviously. But a lot of the hikes, I would say we have basically a morning hike, a lunch option, unless we're traveling from hotel to hotel that day. But typically we would get in early then. But we have a morning hike, a lunch option, typically going back to the hotel, or the option to if you wanted to. And then we would have an afternoon option, and then a dinner or field dinner, and then a evening drive or option. And so you can opt out of any of those things if you're tired, just like most NatHab trips. And then you can really tailor it. Typically we'll have a vehicle that will be doing all of the hikes. And those people want to go on morning and the afternoon hikes. Sometimes they won't even go back for lunch. And then we'll have another vehicle that will be going on a very short, easy hike, very flat, not too far from the car for the morning, sitting and waiting, looking typically for moose or bears, and then hiking back, doing a little bit of a drive while the hikers are hiking, if that makes sense. So there's diverse choice, and people will often switch between those groups throughout the trip, actually. And so it is really good for everything from toddlers to Olympian hikers, is what I always say. And it is, we also have the option of working with a local affiliate company where if some people really want to do some aggressive hikes, they can just, go out, we'll hire a guide for that day and they will go with that person. We'll make sure they have great lunches, great food, everything, and they're taken care of for safety. And they can go out and do an amazing, amazing one of those other hikes that I said are extreme. You can literally actually go and do those exact hikes if you have a group that can do it and want to do it. So basically, it's one of the things I love about working with Glacier or in Glacier and with NatHab is just the flexibility we have with tailoring the trip to the exact group. And so much of the trip is viewable from, I don't want to say the road, but literally the Going to the Sun Road is a giant viewpoint. It was designed that way. We talk a lot about that on the trip. And so you can see so much of the park from the road. In a few spots, you don't really have to do a lot of hiking, but if you do get out and do a little bit of hiking, you unlock this magical world, and then you can go from there as deep as you want. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. I have some questions on hiking gear, so I'm going to combine them here. When you're hiking, do you recommend that people wear heavy-duty hiking boots, or are running shoes okay? And some people were questioning sandals because they saw some sandals in some photos. And also, do the shoes need to be waterproof? And do you recommend walking with hiking poles?
Okay, so this could be like an hour-long conversation. I'm going to be as quick as I can with this. So you want to hike with what you comfortably hike with in your normal daily life. That's what I always tell everyone. Everything I'm about to say, you have to train to be able to do, but you don't have to lift weights. You just have to wear them to be able to do it. So the shoes that I wear, I don't see any of my actual shoes in here, but the sandals here are the exact soles of the shoes that I wear. And as you can see, they're very flexible and very lightweight. So it gives your foot a lot of flexibility. Now, you have to work up to wearing these, but we're talking 7 to 30 days, is what people do. These shoes are prescribed by foot doctors for patients with plantar fasciitis and other different things because it allows more natural movement. So basically, long story short, and I'll talk about it just for one other second, is wear what you're comfortable with. If you hike with trekking poles, which I do, I am very fast with trekking poles, and when I have big, heavy weights, I will use trekking poles because it helps in balance while your intercostal muscles are flexing every single time you are balancing, so it can reduce a lot of the energy you expend every day. But when I'm hiking just with my minimalist backpack, which you can hold up literally on one pinky, less than 20 pounds, like with full water and everything, I don't have hiking poles because I'm faster and it's like less weight for me to carry. Now, wearing these shoes, you want to hike in the shoes that you need. If you need ankle support, then wear ankle support. But what I am in the camp of, if you wear light and minimal shoes throughout your entire life, it changes how you walk. You can't heel step. You have to step on the balls of your foot. You keep your feet underneath you and you propel yourself forward with each step rather than putting your foot heel forward. This is illustrated. If you were to jump up and down 5 times, you are going to be jumping up and down and landing on the balls of your feet. That's the way that I'm talking about walking. If you were to stand on your heels and jump as high as you can and land on your heels, that's the way you are walking, unless you intentionally walk another way. And so that is the illustration of what it, and so basically think of that heavy hiking boot, if you were to put it on your hands and you were to do everything all day. So you put that hiking boot, that's 3.5 pounds each on each hand, you work on your computer, you turn on the light switch, you open doors with it, you drive your car all day long, 8 to 10 hours with those heavy boots on. You are going to get home, you're gonna take those boots off. Your hand is your foot. So your fingers would be sore, just like your toes. Your wrist would be sore, just like your ankle. Your elbow would be sore, just like your knee. And your shoulder would be sore, just like your hip, because of all that extra weight. And so that is when I switched to these ultra minimal shoes, I literally doubled my amount of hiking that I could do comfortably in a day. And I would do an 8 to 11 mile hike, which I did regularly in Glacier as a guy, and come back and I would feel like, did I hike today? Did I just do like Avalanche, a 3-mile hike, or did I do like Iceberg Lake, you know, an 11 or 14 mile hike, you know? And so it was that much of a difference really with those leg shoes. So, but that is not something you just buy those shoes and go on the Appalachian Trail. You have to work up for, you know, a month or months to that, which I did years ago. And so now it is just my, you know, second nature. Does that answer that question? And if you do have questions about that, please email me. I love talking about that. And I don't work with any companies, although, you know, companies have given me shoes to try. I only wear Zero shoes now, and very, very lightweight. And I do recommend having some sort of waterproof shoe for Glacier, because, you know, we've had hot trips in the middle of the summer and people are like, why did I bring all this cold weather gear? That same trip the year before, we had snow and we were all freezing and people were having to buy sweatshirts because they were from Florida and they didn't believe us that it could be cold. And I'm not kidding about that, not picking on people from Florida. They just don't wear pants there. You know, they only wore shorts. So the guy had to wear sweat shorts and sweatpants and a sweatshirt to wear during the trip. So it can be cold, although most of the time we're dealing with heat. But in the early mornings and evenings, it's always cold. Just FYI. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. So we've got questions on when is the best time to go, and more specifically, if you want to avoid a lot of crowds, when's a good time to go?
So the crowds, Glacier has been discovered, although it's still not super huge like other parks like Yosemite, Yellowstone, but it has been discovered. And that discovery is all the way from the end of May until basically they close the road. But there's still, the park is open year round. So I say this about every park, pretty much every natural space. If you get up early and go out onto the trail early, you will not see other people. And if you stay out all day, you'll even outlast them. And they'll have a normal breakfast on vacation in town and a normal dinner time near the park or outside of town. And so basically, if you are hiking before until after that, you will not see people, if that is your goal. But basically, it's a waiting game. Be very polite, and you can find parking. I like to offer people $1 million for their parking space or a granola bar. They always take the granola bar, and you can get parking spaces in these very, very tight areas where it's very difficult to find them. And so it is a benefit of going with a wonderful company like this, who has really dialed this in, because we think about that and plan it all. But you certainly can make that happen if you know how. And those are kind of universal things that work at every park. I mean, not a park like Zion, because, you know, they don't allow park cars into parts of the park, you know, but basically going early and planning on being out, taking your lunch, taking even more than lunch, and being prepared, and you can figure it out. But as far as the time, you know, it really depends on what you want. Be aware, you know, there is a corridor in August where there could be fires, but there's also typical of week to 10 day storm that will put out those fires, you know, first or second week of August, typically. Sometimes that's in early September, sometimes that's in late August. You never know. Sometimes the fire happens July 11th. And it's like that for 3 weeks. It's just, but most of the time, every single trip is amazing for different reasons. One trip, it's going to be flowers. The next trip, it's going to be a perfect blend of flowers and partly cloudy days and a few animals. Next trip, it's going to be, it rained the entire time, it was freezing, but that was the most amazing bear set of sightings we've ever seen, and all of the animals were out because it's so cool and they're able to go out. So it's another reason the Glacier is one of my favorite times. in the inclement weather, we have even better photography and a lot of times better animal viewing because these animals are wearing giant fur coats, and at this high elevations in the open sun, they are burning. And so, it's just different every single week. So basically, beginning to end of the season, it's good to go. Now, if you want to go extreme backcountry, early season, a lot of those passes are still too much snow to safely hike on them. So I would say, you would want to maybe go a little bit later in the season. That's about the only real limitation. So if you wanted to go up to Grinnell Glacier, that's not going to open until probably the end of July, basically. That is an extreme hike, though, especially for, most of the NatHab level trips. But, as with most NatHab destinations, we do really make an effort to tailor the trip to individuals if they want to, break from the itinerary for an afternoon or a day and make something like that happen. But definitely, if you wanted to do something like that a little bit later in the season rather than the first trip of the season, would facilitate that.
Cool. And what camera settings are good for sunsets and sunrises?
Excellent question. I would say, you need a tripod, and I would be shooting at manual. And what I'm really thinking about is not having an auto ISO, which I've started using the last few years. I use the Canon 5D Mark IV. Amazing, amazing platform. I'm heartbroken that they have just decided not to continue producing it, but I'm hoping, crossing fingers, Canon's got something else up their sleeve. And I turn off auto ISO, which is wonderful on this new camera. And so I'll use maybe 1 to 400 ISO, and then basically meter accordingly. And then an important factor is to think that what you're shooting is dark, and so you don't want to expose right in the middle. And so you want to be underexposing anywhere from, 2 full stops or more, even, to get some of those reflections in the water from the actual sunrise bouncing off the clouds. And so that is all, I tried to make it as close to the actual light when I am seeing it as possible. And so you have to underexpose in those situations. And some of those are actual HDR stacks where I am shooting underexposed, one that is like, 4 stops underexposed, one that's 1 stop underexposed, and then one that is like 2.5 stops underexposed, something like that, if that makes sense. But most of what we saw today, those were all one-off shots, if that makes sense. And so basically, it's going to be just dependent on how dark and how bright the sunrise is in that setting. But does that make sense about if it's dark, you want to underexpose and shoot dark, and then make sure auto ISO is off, and shoot a lot more. Shoot before you think it's going, so that you have your settings happening like 20 minutes before you think it's going to happen. Stand there bored. You will see amazing animals during that time span too, also in these places. And then shoot until afterwards, and shooting in both directions, obviously. Does that answer?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. That's the last question we'll take for today. If you do have questions that you'd like Jeremy to address, you can shoot us an email and we'll pass those on to him. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jeremy. This was very inspiring. I loved all your photos, and my thanks to everyone who joined us as well today. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, so we'll have that replay on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Thank you all.